All set, Alice?
No, not quite yet.
Not quite yet. Okay. Ben Vanoy, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Commissioner.
Okay. I think that's it for, other than the back feed. We'll go ahead and begin the Board of Commission meeting today. And as we do for all of them, we'd like to begin with a prayer reading or a thought by a volunteer from the public, followed by a pledge of allegiance led by someone from the public as well. Anyone that would like to volunteer for one or the other? Ma'am?
I'll do the pledge.
You'll do the pledge? Thank you. Would there be someone here who could lead us in a prayer reading or a thought?
Can I nominate
Sure.
Commissioner Lee since it's his last meeting?
Sure, unless Robert, you want to. All right. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the opportunity that we have to live in this great area. We're thankful to be able to convene and to be able to work through issues and talk about this county and the great people that live here. We're thankful for those who protect our freedoms in any capacity that they may be serving in. We pray for their safety. We pray that as we do the same in protecting liberties and freedoms, that we will be cognizant of what we can do and what we can do in appropriate ways. We're thankful for this wonderful country that we live in as well, and we pray for it as it goes through its different gyrations of political thought and maneuvering. We pray that that we and that all of us together will find common ground and go forward. And we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jennifer Young.
Thank you. Okay. We have some additional administrative things they have to do. So before we go to consent agenda, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion or ask for a motion to open for public hearing on items 1 followed by 2.
I'll make a motion that we start our public hearing on agenda item number 1 and under public hearings.
I will second that motion.
All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Public hearing is now open. And this is to discuss the amending the 2022 budgets of the county's general fund and various other budgetary funds, revising estimates of revenues, revisiting budget appropriations of county departments, and or transferring unencumbered or unexpended appropriation balances from one department in a fund to another department in the same fund. Okay. So with that,
If there's no public comment, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Maureen, will you be able to fix, or Tom, be able to fix this back feed? Thank you. Okay, second public hearing to consider and approve reorganization of Soldier Summit Special Service District as a local district. Any public comments? Tim?
Should we open it first? I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing as stated number 2 on our public hearing agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Tim?
Thank you, Commissioner. Tim Taylor from the County Attorney's Office.
In 1984, the town of Soldier Summit was dissolved through a stipulated court agreement, and through a resolution, the Utah County Commissioners created the Soldier Summit Special Service District. And at the time, as part of that resolution, it was to be governed by a triad of officers. And this would be one commissioner from Utah County, one commissioner from Wasatch County, and a resident or a property owner from the Soldier Summit Service District. In addition, this resolution appointed the Utah County Auditor to handle all the financial affairs associated with the district. So the auditor's office has done all the water billings, the receiving of the payments, preparing of the budgets, and in addition, the Utah County Attorney's Office has been the legal advisor to Special Service District, and this has been the way it's gone on for the last 38 years. In 2013, the state legislature passed legislation that allowed a special service district to reorganize into a local district. And that local district, I just want to read what that definition is a local district is a body corporate and politic with perpetual succession, a quasi-municipal corporation, and a political subdivision. That is the same exact definition as a special service district. So when you look at the duties that, the abilities and the powers that a local district has, it's almost identical to a special service district. But I do want to talk about the differences. One of the differences is that the local district can't provide more than 4 services. And so those services are listed within the statute, and so they're limited with regards to that. That same limitation doesn't apply to a special service district. Currently, the Soldier Summit Special Service District is only providing the water with regards to water services. The resolution with regards to that we're asking you to consider today would be to have them continue to operate that water system, and then in the future, this local board, if they so choose, they could add additional services. The second change with regards to how this operates differently from a special service district is who governs. So, like I mentioned, the resolution that the county commissioners passed back in 1984, they appointed a board, that triad of officers. But the statute says if the county commission or if the entity that created the special service district is going to reorganize into a local district, it's you, the county commissioners, who appoint the new board of trustees. It's not the board of the special service district, but rather the entity that actually created the special service district. That is why you are the appointing authority with regards to that. And the individuals who can be appointed is, the qualifications are listed in the statute, and for our purposes, they are going to be property owners. And the way that the resolution, that we wrote the resolution, is that there will be 3 individuals appointed at large. There will be a seat A, B, and C. Seat A will be for 2 years. The term will be for 2 years. Then the other 2 seats will be for 4. And then after that initial expiration of their terms, then they'll be elected. That election procedures for the local district is set out in statute. So everything that we're doing here is set out in statute. The local board is not going to be left without guidance or direction, because there are definitely statutes that provide that for them. In addition to the new board of trustees, the county will no longer, the auditor's office will no longer be the entity which does all the billing, the budgeting, the collecting, and the financial services for the district. So the local district would have to provide those services. So I think one of the biggest concerns is that individuals may have is that, so is this going to affect our water service or the operations or the new well that we're putting in? And no, it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because the hat that the Special Service District is currently wearing right now will just be placed on to the local district. All the contract rights, property rights, obligations, any power and authority that the service district has right now will be transferred over to the local district through this resolution.
Do they have taxing authority?
Yes, they do. They even have eminent domain authority too. And so we have 2 individuals, and I believe 3 now, who have submitted a letter of interest with regards to this. This meeting has been noticed. We have noticed up that individuals who are interested in being considered for this, the commissioners could hear from them. We've provided you with the names of the 2 individuals and their letters of interest. So what would happen if you choose to reorganize this into a local district? We would take this resolution and we would pass this on to the Lieutenant Governor's office. And Lieutenant Governor's office would then certify that. And once it certifies that, hey, this is now a local district with that authority and that power, that's when their actual power and authority goes into effect. And so we would go ahead and do that. We think that this is a good opportunity for the individuals and the property owners to take local control for the services that's going on up there. I think that individuals who are closest to the services probably have a better interest in making sure that it's managed efficiently and properly. And I think that the individuals who will run these boards will be able to have a better ear for the property owners who are going to be serviced by this. Do you have any questions?
So we typically have special service districts, in the way of our finances. Do we have one in this case for Soldier Summit?
Yeah, so with regards
We
to...
generate revenue off of, that we have taxes with. Do we have a special Soldier Summit Special Service District?
Yeah, we have a special service district right now. The primary revenue source is the fees that the users pay for the water service.
So then we would need to dissolve that. Does this do that as well? Dissolve that special service district that we have?
So it doesn't dissolve it, it reorganizes it, which is kind of the same thing, yes.
So in essence, it wouldn't come back up on any of our future agendas.
No, and they would go ahead and they would establish their own bank accounts. Deneen, and we've talked with her already, and financially speaking, they're in really good shape. Deneen does a great job with regards to that, and so she would work with them to make sure that they have everything that they need.
Because currently the county acts as essentially the fiscal custodian for that district, because we manage it as one of our special service districts. They would just manage it as their own independent district. We would no longer deal with their funds. We wouldn't manage their revenues and their expenses. They would do that themselves, have their own bank accounts, et cetera.
And obviously, it's going to take a little bit of a handoff period. And Deneen and Richard and everyone else that I've talked to, they're more than willing to make sure that this is a smooth transition. So hopefully that provides a little bit of solace and peace to the residents there that, hey, we're going to be there to help you out along this process.
I have one letter that's of interest, but the return address is Woodland Hills, so this person might not fit the category you were describing earlier. It has to be a resident,
So a property owner.
property owner.
And so
Okay.
is that Mike Taylor?
It doesn't specify that, but I'll let you follow up with them.
Okay,
with this
okay,
letter.
thank you.
So they could have property.
Yeah. Tim, I'll just give this to you here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren Dusnup. I'm a property owner and water rights owner at Soldier Summit. I guess my main point that I'd like to bring out is I've been unsuccessful at finding any precedent for a switch over from a special service district to local control as it relates to water in the state of Utah. My research, I've been completely unsuccessful. So I'm not here advocating one way or the other. I'm just expressing concern that I don't know anything about this. And so here we are towards the end of the year. I'm assuming that a vote is about to take place, but there's really no information around this that we could point to and say, this worked, this doesn't work. I guess as a property owner up there and water rights owner with future use of the water in play here, it's a lot more disconcerting in our minds to think that the hat passes from one head to the other. It would appear that it's a lot larger than that. We're talking about billing, we're talking about the mechanical infrastructure here. I would also say as a side note that we're in the middle of multi-million-dollar additional drilling of a second well. So it's unclear as to the county's involvement with that. Does that pass over to local control? We're right in the middle of probably the biggest thing that's going to happen at Soldier Summit in the next 30 or 40 years. So it would appear that there needs to be a lot more information disseminated about this, and that this is actually a bigger deal than just shifting billing and mechanical and upkeep over. So those are my feelings. I'm not here advocating one way or the other. I'm just simply expressing a complete and utter lack of information or precedent. And I've done hours of research trying to understand if this has ever happened before, and I'm not seeing that. So those are some points that I would like to make. I'm hoping additional information will come forth, but it's somewhat daunting to think that the mechanical, the upkeep of that system, the billing and all that would shift on a vote that happens here, the latter part of December. So I'm just here mainly seeking information and would hope that you would consider our voice and our concern. And that's what I'd like to leave with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a long, Tim, go ahead.
So the legislation that allowed this to happen came into effect in 2013. And so in researching all of this, in order to make sure that we're doing it right, we reached out to the state service district and local district entity, and we talked through with them with regards to what we were doing and how we were doing it. And they indicated that they felt that we were doing it appropriately. We actually had some templates online where a special service district was reorganized into a local district there in Salt Lake County, and so we used that as our template. And with regards to, whether this has happened, how many times, I don't know, but I know that we have. When we put together this resolution, we ran it around our office. We had multiple eyes looking at it. Like I said, we've reached outside of our office to make sure, we've talked with the professionals to make sure that we're doing it right. And we think that we're doing it right. So, but with regards to the well that's going on, all of the contracts, the obligations, the local district, the special service district currently has, the local district will just take those over. Nothing will change with regards to that. The well will still be drilled. The funds will still be made available. The operation of the system will still continue. But slowly, the local district will take over full control of that. And I think that that's what the legislature finally determined, is that, you know what, why don't we have a little bit more local control? Why don't we allow this to happen? And so they passed this legislation. And so even though it hasn't been implemented, maybe, a number of times, it's valid legislation. We think that we're doing it appropriately. And there may be, still questions that we're all going to face with regards to this. But I think that the mechanism that we're using right now in the resolution is appropriate, and I think that it follows the statute.
And the concept here is it's going to be a transitional, we'll be moving things over to the district while still supporting the infrastructure that we've already commenced.
Yes, maybe Richard could come up and talk a little bit about that, just to give Mr. Dusnup a little bit of peace of mind.
Well, and while he's doing that, so the funds for the well are ARPA funds, and that was, the county specifically tagged those funds for the drilling of that well. And like you said, all the contracts were in place. All those things will proceed under contract just as normal, like any other contract. And as long as they're following those guidelines, that well will continue to be done and drilled and done, and that funding will happen because we've already contracted to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Richard Nilsson, Public Works Director. Kind of to go off of what Tim's already told you, and Commissioner, you're exactly right. We've got two different contracts in place with some engineering firms. One is with Hansnell and Luce. They are looking at all of the water right side of things in regards to what the district is at currently and with the new well. The second one was just awarded at the last board meeting with Sunrise Engineering. That gets into more of the siting of the well, the pipe work that needs to happen with it, the pump house, that sort of thing. That is just getting underway right now. So those items would continue. It's my team that does the operation of the system now. We have a certified operator on staff that is listed as the direct responsible charge with this Division of Drinking Water with the state. What we would anticipate is that would continue in the short term. Whether that's 6 months, a year, I don't know exactly what that time frame would be, but over a period of time, that would transition to whoever the district contracted with to have operate the system. We would assume that would take place over a period of time, but because we as Utah County are the direct responsible charge currently for that water system, we will continue to operate it in the interim, so that the water system stays operational and in good working order. I don't know if that answers the question, or Mr. Deuce, does that kind of answer what you're thinking?
Yeah, I just see liability through the roof, so I'm trying to better understand it.
Sure. Yep. That answer your questions? Okay, thanks.
Any other comment on this topic? Seeing none. Okay. None online. Okay. Motion to close.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. We'll now move to consent agenda, which means that we'll go through the entire agenda. And any items that we have no additional comments or questions about, we'll vote to go into consent and hold the others for discussion. So with that, we'll go look at the regular agenda item number 1 through 10. Are there any to be held on that?
Item number 3, of course.
Hold 3,
Do we need to
2?
hold, yeah, I think we need to hold number 2 table number 2 for closed session.
Okay. Table 2 for us.
Did we want to hold items 7 through 11 to discuss? Did you want to hold items 7 through 11 for discussion, just to bring them up, or I'm fine on consent, but if we want to talk about them.
Yeah, I'm fine with the contracts that we have in place, unless we want to talk
I
about
just didn't know if we wanted to mention them since we have some of the people here. Oh, Paul is waving his hand at
All
us.
looks anxious.
At the very least, I think we need to talk about number 10.
I saw this pop up recently. Okay. 10,
So hold number 10.
number 10,
And I'd recommend we hold number 9 as well to discuss.
hold 9 and 10.
Okay.
Okay. Then 12 through 20.
Hold number 12.
21 through 30.
Hold number 22.
And 31 through 40.
I would say 33.
Hold 33.
Yeah. And we want to. Did we want to hold number 38?
I'd like to hold 38 and 39.
Okay.
And I believe there's no closed session items. Ralph,
So we can strike those.
strike number.
Well, you just tabled number 2.
Yeah, we would need
Closed
to,
session.
That's true.
yeah, we would hold, need to hold number.
Good point. Good
Now, I
point.
do know there's a request on number 42, I just heard about it, for a quick one, if you want to.
We could do that one next week. Okay, so let's just do 41 and we'll strike 42, 43, and 44.
Adam Beck, County Attorney's Office. Could we hold 21? There's a couple items that we just need to continue.
Old 21.
If, Adam,
Oh, yeah, there's that specific one there.
I mean, if the commission wanted to, he could just tell you which ones to continue right now, and you can just
Yeah.
have, without holding it. If that's what you wanted to do, to
Yeah.
shorten that a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. There were 3 items that we wanted to continue. One of them was the Jordan matter, the Hyatt matter,
Oh.
and Utah Regional Housing Corp.
You know, I'm glad you said that because I said hold number 22 and I meant 21. So
I was wondering
let's
why
hold-
you wanted to
sorry,
hold 22.
I was mistaken.
I was a
Right?
little confused.
Hold 21.
21 and
Hold
not
21,
22.
not 22.
Do you still
Get
want to
that,
hold it
Alex?
after those continuances, Commissioner?
We're gonna,
Well, let's discuss them. Yeah.
Okay,
what was the third one?
My notes are
I was like, you
below.
must have had someone you talked to.
We're gonna
Hold 21, not
22.
Not 22.
Yeah.
And we'll have to hold, and then we do have a closed session item for, that would be 41 then, correct?
Correct.
And then we'll strike 42, 43, and 44. Okay.
You almost got it, Adam. We joke about that item because that item is one that tends to take a lot of time in the past.
Okay, I think that's it. Alice, could you review what we've just,
Okay, I have us tabling 2, holding 3, 9, 10, 12, 21, not holding 22, and holding 33, 38, 39, and then as far as closed meetings, we're going to hold as stated 41 and striking 42, 43, and 44.
that's what I have. Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin with item number 3, approve and authorize the sign of resolution amending the 2022 Utah County budget. Commissioner Lee?
So I appreciate the work that's done on this, getting everything squared up for the end of the year, making sure all things are in order as we balance everything out. There's a couple items I just wanted to talk with the commissioners and see what their preference is as we move into next year, especially as they're moving into next year. And so the first one is the increase in charges to the internal service fund for motor pool. This one was to increase the fund on a catch-up basis, recapitalization of heavy equipment. We had discussions about this throughout the year, and I just wanted to see where the commissioners wanted to be on that. There was discussions of doing it all at once, or there was discussions of doing it over some time.
I had talked to the budget team about that on the MRAT and Bearcat, that based on some military usage, it would be a lot shorter period of time that we would have to replace them. But I think we can have a lot more years out of the MRAT and Bearcat than we're anticipating, at least in this outline that we got. The MRAT should last about another 20 years instead of 8, and the same thing with Bearcat instead of 10. Do you see anything contrary to that from the Sheriff's Department? Because in terms of normal usage in the military environment, it's pretty hard on them. And we use them for emergency responses such as earthquake, floods.
Sean Buffton, Under Sheriff. So we worked with Richard and his crew at the road shops. As far as the AMRAP goes, it's already 2007, I think, isn't it, Richard? To have a piece of equipment that's that big, I don't even know that we could get parts for it in 20 more years. And the parts are very expensive. It's not a matter of the armor going bad. That's not the issue. It's a matter of this is an absolute, worst case scenario rescue vehicle. And do we want to be driving a rescue vehicle that's 40, 50 years old? I don't think we do. The MRAP was given to us by the government. It actually does not belong to us. We may have to give it back at some point. We would not replace it. Well, the government's not even replacing them to law enforcement right now. So we would, if we have to get rid of it, or whatever period of time that we decide that we need to get something different or new, then we would probably get another Bearcat, which is a little bit smaller unit and a lot less expensive. We can't buy the MRAP. It's not, you can't purchase one. So I think to say that vehicle would last us 20 more years is a huge stretch. The Bearcat we've had for 8 years, maybe now, 6 years. It's on an F650 frame, Ford 650 frame. Again, the armor's not going to go bad on it. That's not our worry.
No, it's the joints, it's the universal.
It is getting used a lot. And we just figured, in talking to the motor pool, about a 15-year lifespan on those before we replace them is probably appropriate. I just think when we're talking about a piece of equipment like that you want to stretch to 20, 30, 40 years, I don't see in the industry where we do that.
I know the federal government will constantly reshape those vehicles for future response needs, but the basic chassis remains pretty much the same. They'll alter the main body of it, but the chassis itself will remain the same. So that's why, in my mind, from the experience using them and those I've talked to that work with them still, they thought we can get a good 25, 30 years out of these things based on the environment that we use them for.
I don't believe that our mechanics have that same feeling. I think, maybe the government's even getting new ones already, but like I say, that thing's a 2007 already. And
So honestly, how long we keep it doesn't really matter. This is the accounting. That just because we're recapping it between now and 2030 or now and 2032, it doesn't mean we're going to buy a new one in 2030. It just means we would have the money to if we needed to. What will happen is in 2030, I think it was one of them was 2030 and one of them was 2032. It was the MRAP was 2030 and the Bearcat was 2032. What it means is that we'll have the money in the motor pool account to replace them. At that point, that doesn't mean they automatically get replaced. At that point, what would happen is if the sheriff's department felt they needed a replacement, they would have to put it on our agenda, and then we would have to approve it at that point anyway. Right. So all we're doing in this budget adjustment is allowing for us to put money into the motor pool account for that. We have the money this year to put it into the motor pool account. We don't know if we're going to have the money in 2030 because we don't know what the economy would look like. So I don't mind putting the money in the motor pool account now, and we can have the discussion on whether or not it needs to be replaced in 2030 at that time with, whoever happens to be sitting in your seat, my seat, and the sheriff's seat, and they can make the decision at what's best for the county at that time. All we're doing here is making sure that the money is available if we need it at that time.
Right.
So I've got no problem voting to recap this in the motor pool because we're not guaranteeing a new purchase in 2030 or 2032, just that if one was needed, we would have the money to do it.
And the recapitalization process for most of the equipment we have, including computers, it's usually done over a period of time, so much each year. And that's why I was surprised to see it up front. And to my mind, I'm thinking 20 years, so that'd be about $33,000 a year for the AMRAP and $35,000 for the Bearcat. Based on our not nearly as heavy intensive usage as the military uses them for, they're going to have replacements. You're right, they're going to be replacing them.
Yeah.
But for
The military systems too, they, you know, I believe, Richard, you correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, a lot of those work on 24-volt systems. They're just different. And some of the surplus stuff that we've gotten from the government
It's already been
for
used.
wildland fire, and it's a problem for these guys getting parts. You know, if we have to go rebuild that motor at some point, we will. It could be a real headache.
And you're absolutely right. These should be recapped over time. But if I made a list, or if I started to list off everything that should have been recapped over the last 20 years and wasn't by our county because they decided to kick the can down the road, this would be a really long meeting.
Well,
And
they these were donated, and so
They-
we
they
did
were
not
donated.
do recaps on donated.
That was what I was gonna
equipment. So
come to.
that's part of the.
That's why there's no money
Part of
in
the
there
issue.
currently, and that's why we're looking at this as a catch-up, is because the decision was made at the point in time that those were acquired through a donation.
Yeah.
That we would not
That would make
recap them,
sense
but
why they
but
weren't
then when
funded.
we start looking at how do we replace them, you know, 15 or 20 years down the road, 10 years down the road, whatever it may be, there's not a mechanism in place right now to have any funding for that.
We can't
But
depend on
what I'm hearing
donations.
from Richard, I mean, if we go back to when these were donated, it was specifically mentioned that they were not going to be replaced. And so now times have changed.
I don't
And
know
so-
whoever mentioned that, Commissioner.
Well, it was in a commission meeting, so
We
the
knew that they would
commissioners,
have to be replaced at some point.
If
If
you
someone
wanted to
said
have
that,
them.
then that was,
that was the understanding that they had in the meeting. And so that's the reason why they didn't do a recap, is because they said these are donated. We're going to take them as, you know, usage for a period of time, and when they're gone, they're gone. But all I'm saying is that I guess the question that we have is, do we want to do it now on the whole the recapitalization of putting it in there? Or do we want to do it over, you know, I'm looking at it here, you've got till, you know, some of these are 2028, 30, 32. Do you want to just look at it over a period of time? Because the sheriff's department is saying it's needed equipment, so it's not like we're going to say not going to use this again, or we're not going to have this type of equipment into the future.
fortunately, we're gonna be needing these in the future.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
So is it something
all
that we
prefer
want to
to
do
not need
right
them.
now with all of it, or is it something that we want to do over a period of time as we get to those dates?
And I haven't seen your schedule on what the amount of money is, but my understanding was we were gonna do the catch-up and then still do
Yes.
an annual allotment up until that projected replacement.
That was my
date.
understanding as well, as this is the catch-up to get us to that level. There will still be an input each year.
That's how I understood it.
That's what I understood as well. So this was just catching us up.
So when you're reading this, you say the Bearcat vehicle replaced in 10 years, 2032, at a cost of $500,000 today. And that's plus the 10 at 4% of inflationary factor equals 700,000.
Yes, the total replacement will be 700,000, and this is going to catch us up until, like we had been doing it until now.
So I guess the question would be, do we want to do it all, we want to catch it up now, or do we want to catch up as we go through the rest of the payments?
Right.
You know, up to that
So either have a
2032.
large upfront cost and then, or payment, and then several
Little
small ones,
payments.
or all of them equal.
Yeah.
Right.
Over the, that, I got
So-
the question
That's
for
the
you guys
question.
to look at.
See, I think if this was the beginning of the year budget adjustment, I would prefer to do smaller payments over time. But because we have the money this year, I don't mind doing a catch-up this year with smaller payments in the future. Because of the way inflation is going, I don't know if we're going to have room in our budget in the future because of inflation. So I think it's less risk to the county. So my preference is to do a large payment now and smaller over time, because we know we have the money now and the future is uncertain to me. So that's my preference.
So this $2 million represents the full replacement of all 4 vehicles,
Right.
plus additional amount each year hereafter, starting in '23.
Just to catch up.
Just to catch up.
So there's no additional funds going to it, it's just simply to catch up.
Yeah.
I'll put it all to the bank and no additional funds to it except regular maintenance.
Yeah, we don't need,
regular
we don't
catch-up,
need
yeah.
them right now.
Yeah.
We're good right now.
We just want to make sure we can
But
replace
in
it when the time
2030,
comes.
then we're gonna have to be looking at,
Yeah, and at that time, you don't necessarily have to use these
We
to
may
buy an
not.
MRAP. You might find there's something
Yeah.
that's a better use of our money.
I mean, the government could come back and say, we want them back.
Right.
And we have to give them back.
That's a new one for me. I didn't know that they had that option of taking it
That
back.
they do. It's.
From
governments
conversations
should
I
do
had
that.
in the past, that the thought was it was given away and free and clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you want to do?
I'm fine leaving it as is, because I think that I think it's less risk for the future for us.
And I understand the reason behind, because we have the cash, and I've been watching the arc of property and sales tax. It's continuing to go up. The revenues are there. We've had surprise the last couple of years. We keep exceeding our revenues. All we need is a hard reset financially throughout the country, maybe globally, and that might change some things down the road. But we have enough there.
It's sixes for me, because either you put it in this bank account
Or
or
next.
you hold it here and do it in this bank account. That's why, but I thought we should have this discussion.
I think it's a great position.
Since we
discussion to
looked
have.
at that. And even though it's in the, the replacement fund, if things got terrible, I'm sure we could pull, the commission in the future could pull some of those recap back. If
Right,
needed.
and that's,
So it's either we hold it here or we hold it over here.
yeah, I'd rather hold it in the motor pool. And then if for some reason in the future we needed it in the general fund, there's nothing to stop future commissioners from pulling it back.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that?
Again, there was some new nuances here I didn't know prior to, until I got the emails, and I was a little surprised by that. Okay.
So the second one that I'd like to look at is increasing the general fund transfer to the health department fund. It's an increase of $4 million is what's being recommended. And of course, we put $4 million into the health department for 2023. So this is 2022. And this $4 million would, in essence, drop straight to the fund balance, which this last year, we on purpose did not fund the health department at a level so that they could use their fund balance. And so I'm just wondering why we would do this unless we're doing this for some sort of optics for next year when we're talking to the state legislature. I just wanted to have that conversation because it looks like an optics thing, not really a operational thing.
So I would say yes and yes. I mean, part of it is that there's a good chance that in October of next year, we're going to have to sit down with the state and show how much we funded into our health department in order to qualify for state subsidies for the following year. So that's a big part of it. The other part of this is, last year, the discussion of not having the health department have a fund balance was because that money was just sitting there. But in the last 12 months, the health department has done a fantastic job of starting to plan for the future and for population growth. A great example of that in action is that they moved a WIC office from Orem out to Saratoga Springs, and they are recognizing that they're going to need a facility, a north facility, and then probably in another 20 years, a south facility. And that fund balance will soon have a plan around it. They're in the process of creating a plan around that fund balance so that they don't have to bond for those as much for those facilities. So it's kind of yes and yes, like one, that we need to be able to show the state that we're putting in, but also there is now discussion on that there will be a use for that fund balance. And frankly, what we have in the fund balance now is significantly less than what they would need to expand the services for our citizens.
Yeah, okay. So kind of with that understanding that, we did put $4 million in for the budget for 2023. This is
matching that.
2022, which would go into their fund balance. It's a little bit of a, there's a little bit of a, well, let's just say a negotiating game with the state in the future that the commission's going to have to deal with. But I just wanted to point that out because it looks a little funny when you have $4 million that we're doing at the end of the year and we're putting that into a budget for this year, but it's going to drop into their fund balance for a purpose.
When we were at the subcommittee meeting, when was that? April?
Yes.
Somewhere like that,
Yep.
up in American Fork. They were asking why we had not funded it, and that was because they had not needed it, and that was the expression of the health department director.
Didn't ask for it, yeah.
Yes, and they thought they would be fine. They wanted in that meeting that why aren't we more like Salt Lake City would, instead of $4.25 per person in the county, Utah County, and Salt Lake County is $11 and some odd cents per person. And they were wondering why, because we're so large, we aren't much higher. And you expressed very well that that's because we have an average age of 23. We're more active, more engaged, so we got a lot of resources here that we're involved in. And I had mentioned to them that if there's an increase needed, then we need to do a audit of the health department itself to make sure that it's in line with the need of the demands that's not provided by IHC or Revere Health or other health entities and clinics. And that we need to slow down before we jump to conclusions that we need to basically triple our funding to the health department. What I worry about the optics is that we're going to agree with that subcommittee's first impression.
Well, this is funding it nowhere near the $11.
Oh, I know. You're exactly right. You're correct. For my part, I would prefer not to add $4 million in 2022, but to just keep planning on the $4 million for 2023, and then ask the health department board, which is composed of doctors and physicians of various kinds, to do a review from top to bottom to see where we are and where we should be, and that the $4 million that we add will augment what is necessary for the coming year. Anything on that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify
Health
something.
Department Director Eric.
Definitely, Eric Edwards, Utah County Health Department. I just clarify that we definitely need county investment into our. We provide population-based services. It's even in state code to ensure that we protect public health, prevent. We're not the hospital. We don't treat disease. We don't perform any of the medical services provided by the hospitals and things like that. But what we do are things that are critical for maintaining and preventing disease transmission and control, as well as injury, as well as land, water, air pollution prevention. Those require contributions from the local entity to which we serve. And so we definitely, Amelia was correct in stating that we need funds to fund what our obligations are and ethically are responsible for providing services to the public. So, and to the comment about, we are fortunate. Utah County is we have a very healthy population. We have good rates and things like that when it comes to morbidity and mortality, but there are areas where there are concerns. The argument was made that because we have a young population, that we don't need as much investment into public health prevention, but the same could be said because we have such a young population, we have a greater need for maternal child health services and ensuring that we don't have disparities arise from those that need our services for cancer prevention and for epidemiological services and to prevent foodborne illness and making sure that people have access to vital records so that they can apply for jobs and travel and things like that. So all of these core services are things that we need a solid base for, which has historically just not been there. It wavers from year to year, and we are at the bottom of the state, and that's as far as price per head. And we do a lot with what we get, but what we need is just that stable base moving forward. And
that's why that $4 million was so crucial to making sure that base is there for beginning in 23.
And that helps us just work towards what we need to be doing, and then learning what else there might be, and being smart about it, having a 3, 4, 5, 10-year plan to plan for growth. We've put together some CIP projects, a North County building, a South County building. We moved the Orem-Wick Clinic to Saratoga at no cost to the county. It was to better serve based on the data that we're seeing. So we do the best with what we have, and we do operate on a shoestring budget. So I just wanted to make sure that.
And a good example of some of the things that maybe we need to step up for is, I know that the lactation consultants, for example, I think we're currently paying like $13 or $14 an hour, and we can't fill those positions. I reached out to several lactation consultants in the area, and the going rate in our county is $20 an hour, but we're paying $13 or $14, which is why we can't get them. Now, if we start paying $20 an hour and can get lactation consultants for the mothers and the babies that are at the lower end of the economic spectrum, We'll get reimbursement rates from the federal government, but those are delayed by about 3 years. So we, as a county, will need to pick up that gap for 3 years until the reimbursement rates come up. But those services will have lifelong implications on the number of babies that are able to successfully be nursed, because as we know, and science shows, that maternal health and child health is better over the next 50 years if that child is able to be nursed. But I myself successfully nursed 3 children, but I could not have done it without the support of a lactation consultant. Now, I was lucky enough to have money to pay one when I had my babies, but had I had them 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have. And I would have needed these services to do that. And so we're literally setting up generations for success if we can invest a little bit of money up front. And those are things that we haven't done now. But yeah, and the health department has been very willing to go through an audit with us so that we can go through and make sure that they're streamlined and efficient and that they're not wasting money. And we're in the middle of that process now.
Well said. The other area that we definitely are lacking in right now is our environmental health science crew. Not enough health scientists to perform the inspections that we have to do in pools, schools, food, you name it. And so that's another area, another example of where we just aren't keeping up with this exploding population. If the same amount is granted to the health department and the population has doubled, tripled, or quadrupled, and we get the same amount, you can see how we're not keeping up with the service needs that we are required and ethically should be providing to the county for all of these things. So.
Right. But again, in 21, when we were talking about 2022, we thought in our discussion, we thought we were right where we should be. So it's going through a paradigm shift here.
We'll be as efficient as we can with what we're given, but presently, we're not, we just need to make sure that we have a base.
So the $4 million added to the 2022 is meant to cover costs that have already been expended and we're short on?
Well, we didn't have any general fund dollars granted us for the current year.
Right.
So all of it would have to be surplus dollars, which we are needing, as Amelia described, for innovation, for planning 10 years out, for a North County building, South County building, for computer department needs, systems, upgrades, and things like that. If we use it all for operations, I can't use one-time operational money for ongoing operations. Our surplus, that's one-time money.
But the year is almost done. So why are we putting another $4 million into the current year that's almost expired?
So that would be to preserve surplus or our fund balance. Sorry, I couldn't come up with the right finance term. If we use our one-time fund balance, then that money's gone, and we can't use it for future needs such as building buildings.
So the $4 million is a one-time fund balance for the health department, and it will remain there basically unused while we add additional $4 million in 2023.
So, and then that would be for our ongoing operations. That would be the county's subsidy, or does that make sense? It's the amount needed for ongoing public health services.
Right.
And we can't use the fund balance in forever because it will run out. And those are the funds that we need to preserve to think strategically, to be able to.
So one more time then, the $4 million for 2022 is just to replenish the fund balance.
Correct. And to use it, we didn't get any tax dollars for the current year. And so it would be it would be as if we were investing $0 per head if we didn't have that. Does that make sense? And so that's an unsustainable way to fund the health department, to use one-time funds for ongoing operations.
Absolutely.
And so that's the whole premise of where we're very grateful for the $4 million for 2022, but then having that base for 2023 so that we're not in the same boat talking about this next year, if that makes sense.
Well, this is what this is all about. In 2022, we looked at the fund balance that the health department had, and I can't remember if it was $6 or $8 million in their fund balance. And we decided during that budget period of time that we were going to ask the health department to pay, or to not buy that down, but to expense that fund balance down. And that's why there wasn't an increase in there, because we saw a pretty healthy fund balance, and we wanted the fund balance to decrease. And so what this would increase that fund balance back up, but we deliberately made a decision to keep that, let it be expensed this year. And And then the state came, and that's where we're going, is that the state came and said, oh, look, we're looking across the state on who's funding, and they tagged us as the lowest in the state on funding. But there's a reason why we were doing what we were doing. But they still tagged us, and now there's a fight going on in the state on funding levels, and the state wants to jump in and start doing mandatory funding levels for the health department, which is the challenge for next year for the commissioners as they battle through that, because large counties and small counties, they operate differently. You can't just have half of a department. You got to have a whole department there, and so you find some of these smaller counties contributing a lot more money than we do because of just efficiencies that we have in place. And so this $4 million is pretty much an optics, not necessarily an operational. It's an optics to show, because I think all of us would feel comfortable if they took that $12 amount down to maybe on the 6 range, instead of being up there at 12, because the 12 is going to put us in financial harm's way as a county. We're talking a lot of money then on that basis, and so that's the fear, and that's all this is. But the question that I would have is, why 4? Why not 2? Why not 8? Why not? What's the 4? The 4 is the match. I get the match, but what's the 4?
Great
Why?
question. We were funding the health department's operations. Well, the county's contribution. I presented this back in June, but it was about between $2 and $3.5 million fluctuating over the past 10 years, with having a population, as you know, that's exploding. And as the population explodes, the need for public health services, inspections, more plan reviews to help developers, all of those pressures keep mounting, but we have the same amount of staff because we don't. Does that make sense? And so that's the need for just a very modest, doesn't have to be extravagant, investment in what we're doing so we can keep up with the public demand for services. And so if we only gave the health department $1, $2, $3 million or $3 million ongoing, and our population will be doubling again, that's a huge concern.
I asked for the amount around 4 because it puts us just below the $6 per capita.
Okay, so that makes sense though, because then it puts us with a negotiating tool, is what we're talking about with the state legislature.
I'm the one who asked for that amount, for that number, and that was why.
Yeah, and just good to understand that that's about, it's so that we're grateful for that, but that's we've had years where we've given the health department $3.5 million, and somewhere we're already close to that amount, and the population keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so that's my concern as a department head over public health services.
Yeah, but this is more on, because the state won't contribute unless we match to a certain level.
That is the case. There is
right.
And also there's the argument that our county, other counties might feel that state dollars coming to us are basically other state or county taxes are paying for our services because the state might be giving us more. Does that make sense? And so that's another concern they have.
Well, and they fund on a per head basis too, just like around the state. So
but bottom line is we're just hoping to have a stable base from year to year, and then have it keep up with the population growth, so that we're not so that we don't have to rely on federal grants for things that for services that we can't be fully funded by grants alone, or we can't. Revenue has to also come from the county from which we serve and provide the services in. So yeah,
I guess my point is that the $4 million that we put into the budget for 2023 is sufficient on an ongoing basis. This $4 million in 2022 is basically to get it to an optic level so that we can have negotiating leverage at the state capitol.
Okay. On top of that, if the bill passes in October of next year, they will look to see how much each county contributed to decide whether they qualify for subsidies for the following year. So they're going to be looking at the previous year optics, which
that's the leverage.
So we've got to have something in our budget this year.
I remember we were talking about the $4 million for 2023 and onward. I just want clarity on the current year
Yep.
Well, I can support that, knowing what we're doing with it, because it puts us at that level of $6, I think, which is for us workable. The $12 is not, but I would hope, Eric, that you'd be up there fighting with the commissioners in the future for keeping it at that level.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it puts us in financial harm's way into the future.
And then on our end, the service delivery end, we just need whatever that magic number is, the support from the county to provide the basic minimum as well as ethical responsibilities that we have for protecting land, air, water quality, and epidemiology, tracking, surveillance of disease prevention and control, and those things. So I think we agree on that. It's just finding what the optimal balance is, and then having that modest growth from year to year, not staying stable. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And so,
I can support that. I get
okay.
it.
Okay, the next one, if I can move to the next one.
Yeah, please do.
It's the increase, the transfer to the capital projects fund. This is a over $15 million transfer. There's $6.6 million in the CIP plan, and then there's the one that I want to focus on is, and there's a 10% inflationary adjustment to the currently funded projects of 9.1. I asked Jeremy to separate the ARPA versus the non-ARPA, and Jeremy's here, so the ARPA funding is over $33 million, and he times that by 15%, which gives us a $4.9 million. Now, and then the non-ARPA is 7.8. Of course, the 7.8 and the 4.9 don't add to the 9.1, so I got to ask you a few questions on what that is. I know you have this at a 15%, and it looks like in here in the capital projects fund, it's at 10%. Is that the difference that we're looking at between 10 and 15%?
Two parts to that. So Jeremy Walker, Director of Financial Services. So in between the time I recalibrated by separating those out, I talked to Richard about more about his take on what that inflation impact has been. And our initial estimate was 10%, which would have been for the combined ARPA and both together. So when I broke them out using Richard's estimate of 15%, that's why these numbers are slightly different.
So if we take the if we take the over $33 million and times it by the 10%, that would fall in line with that 9.1 that we got from your memo. And the reason why is because we already have a 10% inflationary mechanism in our ARPA. So this looks to me like a double up. It looks like we've got, and it's no one's fault, it's just that we've got an ARPA team, and we know because we've been looking at the ARPA dollars, and we've got over $12 million sitting in there for inflationary matters already at that 10%. And this 10% is on top of that. So I don't think we need to have 20% is what I'm saying on there.
Well, when I looked at it, this very similar to the motor pool, that if it gets moved in, it's not like it's permanently encumbered. We would have it wouldn't be that big of a deal for us to move that. The other thing that this would do, if we put it in there and we don't need it, we can just let it fund more years of CIP. Once again, I look at this as a hedge against future inflation. If we need it, great, we have it there. If we don't need it, then we can just fund future years of CIP, and that can be reflected in a lower contribution in future years' budgets. So that's why I didn't mind putting this in now. If inflation continues to look like it did the last year, we're going to need more than 10%. So I looked at this as a hedge against future inflation. I would be thrilled if the last 12 months we'd only had 10% inflation on construction projects, but we've seen construction projects range anywhere between 20 and 40% inflation. So I think you're right, this might be doubling up. I'm not necessarily uncomfortable with that because we're still running a budget that is in the black, but not necessarily committing this for the future if we don't need it.
Yeah, and budgets for me, I just did the math on it, and I would like to reduce that 15 million down to 12,349,000. That would take off the 3,301,500, which we already have in the ARPA, because budgets are just that. They can be opened up and they can be adjusted at any time if needed and necessary. And I think it's just cleaner that we hold it consistent with what we're doing. So that would be my proposal to it.
There are several other ARPA projects that have been banging on the door, so I'd like to keep those funds set aside for those and keep the inflationary pot that we've got there for that very reason.
Well, if you think there's more projects that you want to spend that money on, then we should use this money in that fund. We should keep the money here in this budget adjustment. We should leave it in the budget adjustment if you feel you want to leave that in, if you don't want to use ARPA money for that inflation.
Yeah.
Well, you got $12 million in the inflationary thing and $9.5 million on the other side in the ARPA funds. There's still room in there. I just think it'd be easier to keep them separate.
Yeah, because we've been handling ARPA as a one-time standalone fund for specific projects, and we only have a couple years left to get this wrapped up and done. And there are several other projects that have been knocking on our doors, all three of ours, asking us for funding for X, Y, and Z. And so I'd like to keep the ARPA funds out of that and keep it separate as we've had done in the past.
Okay.
So are you saying you're okay with changing that number from 15 to the 12,349,000?
Is that what you're thinking, Tom?
Yes, that'd make me more comfortable.
Okay.
Okay.
Those are the only questions that I had on agenda item number 3. So there's only just one change.
Commissioner Gardner, do you have any other items?
Nope. So it looks like the only real change then would be the reduction with your math
The ARPA portion, yeah.
of the ARPA portion. Okay.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right.
So Bill, do you want to make the motion since you've got the number written in front of you?
I'll make a motion that we approve and authorize the signing of the resolution amending the 2022 Utah County budget with the spreadsheet that was provided to us. The only change in there was to change the increase of transfer of capital project fund from the $15,650,500 to $12,349,000.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That passes 3-0.
Okay.
Okay, we're now into number 9. Ben?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ben Stanley with the County Attorney's Office. Pleasure to be with you. These items 7 through 11 represent American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA medical grants that the county wanted to give to 5 recipients from an RFP process. A couple of them are a little more involved and merited some discussion, so we're grateful for a chance to talk a little bit about these. The Attorney's Office has been burning the midnight oil with great support from the Clerk's Office and many others to make sure that these get ready for today's agenda. A couple of them have some complicated concerns. This is one. Rocky Mountain University Foundation, the grant here, one of the things, let me take a step back and say, one of the things that we have been trying to do with each of these is to protect the county against worst case scenarios. That's what lawyers do. And so one of the worst case scenarios that can come up with these federal grants is that the federal government, and it's an unfortunate reality about these ARPA grants, the federal government's regulations and the U.S. Treasury's guidance are continuing to evolve, and so they have the ability to claw back grant money, and we don't know all the triggers because they're still revising their own regulations related to that. And so the worst case scenario in these ARPA grants is that the federal government does a clawback and says we want some of that money back, and we would have to go back to the award recipients and say because something was not seen as in compliance with the eligibility requirements for these ARPA grants, the money needs to be returned. The county's not paying for that. You're paying for that. You have an obligation to indemnify us. But in some scenarios, it's conceivable that some of these entities could be non-existent at that point or defunct or in bankruptcy or under threats of litigation that cause them to be unable to satisfy their indemnification obligation. And so in the event that there's a grant recipient that has real property, that gives us a great deal of assurance. We can look to that real property and either impose a lien or a restrictive deed or some other solution that gives us some confidence that the county is fully protected. In the case of Rocky Mountain University Foundation, their properties are leased. And so though we love the project, we've loved working with them, and as we've negotiated contracts, we have a concern in that risk. We want to be front of mind for you commissioners. We had proposed as an attorney's office that there be a bonding element to this because there is no way to lien or put a restrictive deed on real property. And the bond would have given us a lot of confidence that in that worst case scenario, there would be a fund of money to pay back the federal government if that eventuality occurred. The reality is that bonds are expensive. There are complications. We've heard from the commission office that there may not be an appetite for imposing that requirement, but that was the recommended course from the attorney's office. And so we wanted that to be on the record, and we wanted that to be front of mind, that in this particular agreement, as it sits on your agenda system, there are a lot of terms that protect the county in a lot of different ways, but there is not this bonding piece that we had recommended. There are concerns from the applicant about that. There are concerns from the commission office about that. There's a concern from the attorney's office that if we don't have that piece, we're exposing the county to a possible multi-million-dollar unexpected hit to a budget 5, 7, 10 years from now if the federal government decides to claw back a significant part of this grant. And so the recommendation from the attorney's office on agenda item number 9 is to continue it or take more time. We could look at lockbox agreements. We've had proposals from the applicant for other solutions, but the special provisions restrictive deed that can exist with some of the other recipients doesn't exist as an option with this one. And so we wanted that to be on the record and you to be aware of that risk.
So the other recipients for the other projects, the water project specifically?
Well, water projects and the other medical recipients here have real property in most cases, except perhaps the one I think Paul's going to speak about. But there are other opportunities to have some protections that don't exist in this particular award recipient. And so that's the concern that has caused the attorney's office to recommend against adopting this in its current form, understanding that there may be an appetite to do so anyway. We want you to be aware of that.
Okay, because on the other projects, if one, for example, instead of using for the entire project, they were going to use it just for a section of that project, and that funds would go to that specifically. And that's how they were addressing that particular overall project they had in mind. We also had the clawback where if they can't accomplish certain things over a certain period of time, then there was this clawback, we'd take the money back. Does that not work, this mechanism work in this case?
Well, it can, but the federal government has a clawback against the county. And if we have monies clawed back from us, we're going to claw back from the award recipients. And if they don't have assets and they don't have real property in the county, we have less avenues. So they do have those obligations under the terms that you see before you. The attachment A lists a lot of terms that require them to indemnify us, have language that they have to forfeit personal property if they're not compliant, and the federal government's coming to us to get some money back. But we have less security than we would in other circumstances. And that's the concern that we've raised, it's the reason why we wanted to have a little further discussion. I mean, in the strongest terms possible, the county attorney's office is saying, you could take more time with this one, and you probably shouldn't adopt it in the way that it is. But we understand the other dynamics that are going on and some of the other concerns. So we wanted that in the record. Does that answer the question? I mean, there are still some options, but there are less options because, let me tell a story, I guess. Corinthian Colleges, Inc., huge company, billions of dollars of revenue. When the Attorney General of California turned her eye and ire on that entity because of the way they were marketing, a very viable, strong business very quickly became a non-existent entity. And so it didn't have assets any longer, didn't have an ability to make good on any indemnification obligations it had. So if we try to claw back and there's nothing there, we're trying to get blood from a stone and there's no way to get the money that we're owed. And so they do have those commitments. We could claw back, but we would be more comfortable if we had real property that we had a security interest in or had a way to ensure that we would get enough money to satisfy the federal government in that eventuality. So if there's an existential threat to the award recipient and the federal government's coming to us, we see a risk and want you to know about that.
Because in this case, this particular one here, they've been in play now for 25 years. So
yeah,
it's not something that was created recently and asking to move us up further still. They're just asking to augment what they're already doing.
Right. We're not saying that there's not anything that concerns us currently. These are all viable entities. We don't question their stability. We're just recognizing that even with Utah Valley University and major public universities and entities that we know have been around for a long time and will be around for a long time, we still are requiring a lot of very specific protections, restrictive deeds and other things to make sure that we have a way to pay and there's never any eventuality. We attorneys want to make sure you never have the possibility of a chance that someday there's a multi-million-dollar request from the federal government and there's no dollars to satisfy it and you have to adjust budgets for that. So that's our concern. That's what we've wanted to make sure is clear, and happy to answer any other questions.
Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Gardner.
I would just like to thank you for making sure that every T was crossed and I was dotted and made us aware of every fraction of risk. That is your job, and you guys do it very well.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yep, thank you.
My risk tolerance is a little bit higher than yours, but that's why you're the attorney, and I'm decided to run for office because apparently I have high risk tolerance.
And Ben, you said something that I think you should correct, and that is never have any risk out there. I think something along those lines, because, boy, if we had an earthquake or something of that nature, it could wipe out a lot of stuff, and then we'd never have any basis to go back and collect stuff, even if we think that we had it in place. But my risk tolerance is a lot higher too, and in looking over, especially this specific application, we actually looked at the bonds and just imagine receiving a grant for $3 million, and over 20 years you have to pay $1.5 million of that back. That it's just like, how is that a grant? It's like a half grant, right? I just wonder how that would, that squares.
I wonder if we should ask for RFPs for half grants.
Yeah, and then the other half you have to pay. And then I think that for me in looking at it too, you're right. The federal government is squishy on a whole bunch of things. They change the rules all the time on us, going back and forth. And as we've read through them as a commission, in looking at the ARPA, it seems really front heavy. It's front heavy in the requirements. To Commissioner Sakovich's, there's two parts to this. The first part is that we have to have this obligated by the end of 2024. And if it's not obligated, then it can be expensed all the way to 2026. There's clawbacks inside there, and we have those in contracts. If it's not expended by the 2024, we're going to claw it back before the end of that so that we can reallocate it and hopefully get it expensed. So there is some clawbacks that we already have in place for that front end. It's the back end that I think you're referring to, and that on that side with the ARPA, I'm reading that a lot more loose and squishy in the sense that they're going to be looking, in my opinion, on did you appropriately expend these funds according to the rules and obligations that we have in place. So I'm comfortable in moving this one forward and would like to make a motion, Commissioner.
Before you do that, Commissioner, one other point I can make if it could. So this is Rob Moore, Utah County Attorney's Office. One additional point to understand is Ben reached out to Rocky Mountain and asked them to provide some language as to the lockbox. And he still hasn't received any of that. That was their offer to us as an alternative to the bonding mechanism. And that has not been provided. That was part of why the request to continue this, so that language can be provided and put into the agreement, as was offered by Rocky Mountain to do so. So that's just another element to this.
Would you redefine lockbox just for everybody?
So a lockbox agreement would be essentially making their bank an escrow agent for the county, and we would get some rights to approve and some triggering conditions upon which their funding from the U.S. Department of Education or other sources would get held up until we approve of them to move forward. We could have a bankruptcy remote provision in there as well. They've sent us just today some bullet points of what that could look like, but it's just a start. And there are details that they don't know from us. We don't know from the federal government, but that was one of the solutions that they offered. From our perspective, that doesn't even still provide the same kind of security a bond would, but we think that would be more meaningful than going forward with just the ARPA terms that we have in Attachment A to the agreement that you see before you and the Attachment D that you see. So
that's the middle ground.
Well, I get that. I get that when you're, when a problem's presented, then there's their options start to be discussed. And so, yeah, I think that that's fair to have options going forward. But again, I'm ready for a motion if you're ready.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve and authorize the commission to sign the agreement as stated in number 9 on our regular agenda.
Seeing as my risk tolerance is similar to that of yours, I will second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, that passes 3-0. Thank you for that work, Ben.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you can see your family now.
Yes.
Number 10, approve and authorize commission signature on American Rescue Plan Act for state and local fiscal recovery fund agreement with Family Haven for the provision of medical service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, Paul Jones with the Utah County Attorney's Office. Perhaps we could have taken care of this on consent agenda, and Ms. Christensen wouldn't have had to sit through this whole meeting, but she probably enjoyed herself.
Who doesn't love talking about budget adjustments?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Your crickets.
On number 10, I think it was just maybe an oversight or a typo. On page 1, we indicate that's a grant for $1.5 million, and that should indicate $2 million.
Oh.
I've clarified
So you
with.
mixed
Quite the
the
typo.
two.
Yeah, I think we carried it over from another
It's only a $500,000.
document.
It's only a
or something.
$500,000 typo.
She would not have noticed.
She was concerned,
Rightly so.
so we would need.
So you would like us to make the
That
motion
amendment, yeah.
to amend it to say 2?
Yeah, there's maybe like 4 instances on that first page that would all need to be.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve item number 10 pending the change of where it says 1.5 million in multiple locations to change that to say 2 million.
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, that passes 3-0. Thank you. Okay, number 12, approve and authorize a transportation, economic, and infrastructure consulting agreement based upon commission review of submissions to an informal competitive process for potential qualified candidates.
Commissioners, good afternoon again. Ben Stanley, County Attorney's Office. This item originated from the Commission Office, a request for the county to retain a transportation, economic development, and infrastructure consultant. The amount that was requested to retain a consultant like this was below the threshold that it would require a formal competitive process. But even so, on recommendation of the Attorney's Office and the Purchasing Department's advice, the Commission went through an informal competitive process, received 4 applicants to this particular contract opportunity, and 2 of the 3 commissioners selected the same one. And so what is before you is the current contract with an updated, as of this morning, entity name that is why you see an updated contract title. But that is the agreement provided by the vendor with protections and milestones and achievements entered in by the attorney's office to make sure that we were having expectations met with respect to this contract. So
Yeah.
that's what this one's about. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have one question, just to verify, from when I read the contract, there is a 30-day cancellation. So if for some reason we felt that the milestones or metrics weren't being met, or we were unhappy with the services, we do have the ability to cancel with 30-day notice, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's also a
Just wanted to
2-year
make sure.
term on this agreement. So
Right.
it goes from January 1 of next year through the very end of 2024.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah.
Okay. For a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve item number 12.
I'll second for the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Nay.
Any opposed?
I'm a nay.
Nay. Thank you.
Adam, it's all you, right?
Reholding, I think, number 16, or is it 21?
No, it's 21.
21, excuse me. Gotta
21,
correct
but I
my,
thought it was 22.
I need to correct my notes here.
21, not 22.
Yes, not 22.
Yeah, that would have been the first time since I've been here that would have gone through on consent, so I was kind of excited there, but.
Oh, maybe next year.
So Adam Beck, County Attorney's Office. I just wanted to talk about those continuances that I mentioned earlier in the meeting. The Natasha and Peter Jordan matter, I spoke with their counsel this morning. They were still waiting to hear back from the county regarding their greenbelt status. I know that they
So
applied.
which one, I don't have their name on here. What's it listed under?
Well, it's actually on the spreadsheet, but it hasn't
Yeah.
been uploaded here. And I think that's another reason why we may want to continue it a
so
month.
They are on the.
I'm just trying to find which
they're on
one.
Page 2 of 3, the bottom.
On the spreadsheet, it's on the bottom of page 2. But the application is not uploaded here.
Okay.
I think that may be another reason why it might be a good candidate to continue
Okay.
to make sure that the commission has the application in front of them.
And that was that also true for Hyatt?
And then Hyatt and the Utah Regional Housing Corp. There was just some complications. Those are not on that spreadsheet, and so I wanted to just make sure that the commission has an opportunity to review those. I wasn't sure if you
So
had
the
seen
Utah
the
Regional
spreadsheet.
one is on there.
Sorry.
Utah Regional Housing Corp. I have that. Whoops. Why is it?
It's not on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I don't have that on this particular one.
And so
It's just on our agenda.
it is on the agenda, and so is the Hyatt one. I just thought because it's missing in the spreadsheet and not on the agenda, just to keep it clean, maybe we'll continue it. It's our understanding that there's not a rush that it needs to be done right away.
Okay.
And so we could just include it on the next one.
So we're continuing, Jordan, Hyatt.
And the Utah Regional Housing Corp.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So there's the Whitney Hammond one. I recommend that we just take the settlement offer for all that money. Let me get to it here.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with that.
They offered to settle this thing for $2.87.
They made a payment of $287. And they've got a.
Abate the, and then we
Abate
abate
amount
the
of
$10 on that one.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I thought that in the past we had a policy in place that was $10 or less. I don't remember now. I thought
So
it was
there is for personal property.
we don't have a policy in place for this.
Correct.
That's one of our projects for 2023.
I was going to say, make note, can we get that done?
We haven't talked
And with
about
gas prices the way they are, it might be like $20.
I'm guessing with the
Just
amount of time,
consider that.
$500 of county funds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, the amount of money we're spending in
Just the 5
just
people
human
for
capital
speaking about
time,
this.
correct. So let's take that into consideration when we address that.
Yeah, we are preparing a policy.
Okay, and the Hyatt was the one that we continued, right?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And Jocks, we'll get to that one. Okay. Trying to remember, this one's a deny. And it was personal property tax. They're claiming that he was not aware. I can't remember what they're.
It was not aware of any tax notices mailed to him. He states that this is the first time that he files for personal property taxes and that since he never saw the notices.
Yeah. And I'm sure we assess them based off of others that are similar, correct?
Paulette Stetzer with the assessor's office. That is correct, Commissioner. Due to his business type, he was assessed based off of his type of business.
Right.
He's now telling us that he only has, this limited equipment I believe it was a cell phone and some other
Some computer.
medicinals, meaning it would be a small office, but we wouldn't know that.
Right, exactly.
Again,
There's no way
it's
you'd
very
know.
possible his equipment is parked at another location if he does own or use other equipment to run this business.
Right. So given what we know, I feel like we should debate this one. We've done this in the past with those that are under the threshold that just.
I would agree.
So
I'm
Okay.
supportive of that.
So then that one would be abated. And then we did the Hammonds. Okay, the Jones. Jones. Okay, this one's kind of a human interest one. Obviously, this is is this the Greenbelt one? Oh no.
Referring to
Oh
the
yeah,
Jones one?
so the Jones one. This is the one where
Husband died and.
yeah, this okay. I actually I'm okay leaving this one the way it is because I think that the ownership is the question on this one. I had forgotten that. So she didn't actually own the house. That's correct, right? Am I okay?
Right.
Okay. This Centillion. Nope, sorry. My notes on that one have. I'm going to go to the next one. Eversole. Which one is it? I have one more on here, and I. It might be the Hyatt one where her husband passed away. Is that the Greenbelt one?
Yes.
Okay, that was the one I was looking for, but that one we're continuing.
Yep.
Okay, and then the Ridgewell. Let's see. This is another estimate of property tax. This is a first notice, first time. Yeah, is there more story to this one?
Paulette Stetzer with Assessor's Office again, Commissioner. This one also she's stating that this business, that she only has simple equipment, that she's just a hairstylist, but to our knowledge, she actually is a salon owner.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and it's in a commercial front.
Okay.
So the estimation was based off of similar like businesses within the county.
Okay. All right. Those are the only ones that I have.
Was that the Ridgewell?
What's that?
The Ridgewell?
Yes.
Okay.
I did have the Utah Regional Housing Corp and the Hyatt one, but if those are going to be continued, then.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully you take notes on that because I didn't write that down. So you got the
have
notes
there.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the property tax actions on 21 as stated in this meeting and discussed and then modified.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 3-0. Number 33, approve the 2022 fraud risk assessment. Commissioner Gardner.
Wait till Calvin comes up.
Calvin Bergman, Clerk Auditor.
Calvin, is this the first time you've had the privilege of coming and speaking in a commission meeting?
It is the first time I've had the privilege.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm a newbie, about a little over 3 months on the job so far. So
Yeah, I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind. I think part of the fraud risk assessment includes having presented it to the commission. So I thought I'd give you an opportunity. And besides, we hadn't been graced with your presence yet. So
I think I've met everyone individually, but yeah,
Right, but not
been
in a
here with
public meeting.
collectively acting in your office. So I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, the fraud risk assessment is a requirement executed by the state auditor's office. They started it about 2020, and so we've done it for a few years now. The purpose of it is to lower entities' fraud risk and make the governing bodies and management aware of their risk and how to mitigate those risks a little bit. Is it a catch-all for everything? Absolutely not. But are there some best practices here, especially that number one, if you guys are reviewing that right now, separation of duties is critical, so that's why it has 200 points. So if you're not having separation of duties, basically the recommendation is, well, you're going to have a high-risk entity. And we do meet that requirement, which is good. Some of the items that I would recommend we do in the future, we have no's on 4, 5, and 9. 4 is having an annual commitment to ethics, statement of ethical behavior by employees and elected officials each year. 5 is training being completed by the governing body, and that's offered by the state auditor's office, and that is basic training on financial reporting, budgeting, which you're obviously in that mode right now today. Fraud risk assessment, like we're doing right now, and internal controls and things like of that nature. The last point on here is number 9, does the entity have a formal audit committee? And I would just personally recommend that we do adopt an audit committee at some point with a charter that ideally you would have the internal audit function, which I am a part of, reporting directly to them, right? And so you would have that, and you would still have a stakeholder from the commission on that audit committee, but that way you could have an audit committee separate from all management, where you would have that reporting structure functioning. But other than that, I'm happy to report that we are a low-risk entity according to the fraud risk assessment, but I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Yeah, so just to recap, so you said it was items 4, 5, and 9. One is a yearly ethics statement, which I think probably could be facilitated by the HR department. Yearly training, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's through the state auditor's office, but I wonder if we could sync that in Relias.
You could probably have a hyperlink.
So both of those things would be fairly easy to tackle in 2023, and then the last one would be having a formal audit committee that the internal audit group would report to. Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Thank you.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve item number 33.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. 38. Actually, 38 and 39 are hand in hand. Given some information from the state auditor that I think we just received last evening, what was it, 4 o'clock or so, 5 o'clock, that there are functions that are uniquely accounting, and there's other functions that are more administrative. Some are minor relations to auditing, and more toward administrative. And we don't have and in the summary of the initial finding by the state auditing office basically said that our procedures were more limited than would be necessary to express an audit opinion on the county's compliance, internal controls, or any part thereof. Accordingly, we do not express such opinions. We have identified the procedures we performed and the findings resulting from those procedures. Had we performed additional procedures, or had we made an audit of the effectiveness of the county's internal control or other matters, might have come to our attention that would have been reported to you. I'm thinking we probably, these two items need more discussion based on what the future comments may come back from the state auditor. And I'm more inclined to suggest that we strike these 2 items until we have a more thorough review of the processes that are currently in place, so that it's in compliance with state requirements, but at the same time is not maybe more than necessary, is what I was thinking on these 2.
So if I could just say, my name is Ralph Barnes, HR Director, and my office was asked to facilitate the transfer of employees and also to help with the termination of appointments of employees. And the main role that I felt I needed to fulfill was to ensure that we were following, policy, and that, the commission does have the ability and the right to do so. So I think the most important thing I just want to say is, the commission absolutely has the ability, to do this if they want to. They can vote to, transfer employees, within departments if they determine that it's in, the best interest of the county, which is what the commission has done in this case. And of course, they always have the right as the appointing authority to end an appointment at any time. So I will just leave it at that. And if you have any questions for me, but it sounds like there needs to probably be a little more, discussion amongst the commission. Is there anything else you need from me on this?
No, just that going over the Senate Bill 162 and comparing the notes with the state auditor, I perhaps thought maybe we need to think this through a little bit more. Maybe have more of a discussion, not only with the state, but with the affected department heads.
So I think we should take the two items separately, look at 38 and 39 separately. So I'll address 38.
Okay.
With 38, what I read from the state auditor's office from their memo yesterday was that what we as a county have determined was exactly correct, that there are currently functions being done by certain departments that affect our general ledger and our audit report, and that those functions should reside in the auditor's office. Mm-hmm. So what the review from the state auditor's office found was exactly what we have proposed, that there are functions that need to be separated. There are administrative functions that need to remain with the departments. No one has disagreed with that. There are functions that affect the general ledger that should reside in the auditor's office. That's what the state auditor's office confirmed with us. So I think that basically what I see is that there is a situation where we have functions that are affecting our financial statements that have caused us to get findings from our external auditors that should reside in the auditor's office. Now, I kind of feel like it's Groundhog Day a little bit, because I feel like I had this exact conversation 2.5 years ago as the auditor. And I also feel like we've been having this conversation for months here in the county. Not everybody was included in the conversations the way they probably should have, but this is something that, to propose this, to say, wow, this is new, we should look at it further, it couldn't be further from the truth. This is years in the making, and we've discussed it in, I don't know, half a dozen meetings at the very least. However, I would be willing to delay the move. Like, a move has to occur, and I will end up voting for some sort of a move of some functions to the auditor's office, because that's where they need to be. History has shown us that, practice has shown us that, and we now have a memo from the state auditor's office that confirms that. However, I'm okay delaying it if I can get confirmation from all of the departments that are affected that even if they don't love the outcome of the audit, that they will not fight back and that they will abide by the outcome of an audit, even if it means that some of the functions that they currently have employees doing will be moving to the auditor's office. So I think I reached out to most of them, and I just would ask that those affected departments, I think, is Eric still here? I don't know, he's the one I haven't been able to talk to.
No.
Did he step out? In the meantime, maybe.
My thought was if we could have that outside audit come through and review each of the departments and say, these are the positions that should be.
That's been in the plan the whole time.
Right, yeah, so that's why I was thinking maybe we should strike this until we get to that point, and then we could then bring these up.
Right, and I'm not willing to do that until I hear from people that they are not going to fight this tooth and nail, and that they'll do what's best for the county. So what I'm saying is I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm not willing to do that until I hear from these individuals that they recognize that we do need to look at this, but they need to embrace this process. We need to work together, and in the end, I don't think there's going to be anybody that's happy with the final result. Everyone's going to have to compromise. And so what I would like to do is just get people on the record saying that they're willing to do that. And if that's the case, then I'm willing to punt this change until the audit is completed. But I do think that something needs to occur. And I think that's fair. So Richard, I want to start with you. We'll just kind of go around in a circle. Are you okay with, because this does affect your department.
Yes.
And you recognize that if we go through the audit, there's going to be, I will commit to you that I'll give you the administrative resources you need to run your department, but you're probably going to lose some functions, and that's not going to make everyone happy.
And understand that yes, I understand that we probably won't be exactly where we want to be, but I do appreciate you taking the opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, let's get this audit, the review of this done before we make the change. I think that's the right move, and even though I may not be happy with the outcome, I will abide by it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Patrick, how about you next? I think you're affected to a lesser amount, a significantly lesser amount, because your department doesn't have as much, but.
Right, at least in the current resolution as stated, I don't actually have a staff member.
Right, but I do think that your department will be affected by the audit, even if this were to pass today.
Yeah, and we're happy to have an audit, and I certainly would abide by whatever the audit comes up, but I would tell you, this is exactly what I will tell whoever audits, is the position that's in question in my department is an office administrator, and as an office administrator, they have office administrator duties. And so if you take a piece of the job away, I would ask that we keep an office administrator to do those duties.
I think that's absolutely fair, and I'm almost positive you'll find more things for that person to do to fill
Absolutely.
that gap.
I'm sure that's the case. Thanks.
Okay, I think that's fair. Thank you. Sheriff, do you mind?
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually sent an email to all of you yesterday with a letter stating that, saying what you're asking, that the problem for me, and I think the others, is we were not involved in the process. This does affect our departments drastically, and as a professional courtesy, it would be nice to be involved in a process that has these type of trickle effects that are going to affect us. So, and even little things like, we understand that there's certain processes that I agree do abide in the auditor's office, but even in that report, further communications with John Dougal, having communications with him that some of the things that we're doing are actually okay, but maybe there's software issues that need to have limitations. So I just think there's lots of things that need to be looked at. So I really do appreciate looking at this first, auditing first, and making decisions with recommendations from the audit.
And just as a note, there are software limitations, but that's why we're updating the ERP system. So we'll all feel that update over the next 12 to 24 months. So I think this can be done in conjunction with that. All right, so thank you for your commitment. I know that you're probably not going to love the outcome of the audit, but your commitment to abide by the audit is very helpful, and that gives me the assurance that I need to feel comfortable maybe voting on this a little bit later. I don't see the health department director here, but
I'd certainly be very helpful, willing to abide by.
Yeah, I can't imagine he would be unwilling to do that.
That's my key interest, is that we, now that we began initial audit, and given what I read in it, it sounds like it's just more of a cursory review. So if they can come in and let us know what the processes entail, which ones should be underneath the auditor, which should reside with that department, and then give us which positions are.
Yeah, and frankly, that was the plan the whole time.
Right.
It's and a plan that you've been on board with the whole time.
Absolutely, yes. Until
you just changed at the end here.
I changed because I understood that SB 162 was more open than what the other direction I had received earlier. So that's why I was thinking, based on what I've got from.
Okay, but that was never even part of the discussion for the first 4 months. So, but that aside, I think it's important to recognize that we do need to bring the audit statements in line in the county, and that we do need to open up those processes, and that we have committed the whole time to making sure that every department has the resources they need to do their administrative duties. I can feel comfortable with that, but this is something that's been discussed over the course of years. I think I see our auditors. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to give maybe some high-level background and overview about the functions in question and really why this is an issue. Anything that any organization does. The county, a baseball team, a civic group, doesn't matter who you are. You basically have three elements to anything you do. You're going to have a planning element, you're going to have an execution element, and you're probably going to have a reporting element. And so when we think about the county government and we think about finances specifically, the way this would translate into financial operations for a department, planning is something a department does when they budget. They plan the money that they need for next year. They ask for the money that they need for next year. That's the planning element. The execution element are the transactions that occur throughout the year. This is when you make the purchases that you planned to make. This is when you hire the staff you planned to hire. You spend the money that you were budgeted. And then there's a reporting element where you then report what happened transactionally. In the world of accounting, they're almost completely focused on that reporting element. That is giving an account, giving a telling, if you will, of what happened and how the transactions impacted the fiscal position of the entity that is being reported. In the private sector, this is why you have an annual financial statement that a publicly traded company will give and other kinds of statements that are required by regulators. And those statements are required to correctly materially state the financial position of the entity. It's a very important element. It has a lot to do with shareholders and stock purchasers and whatnot that are essentially owners of the company. In the case of the public sector, the public at large has an interest in understanding the financial position of government entities. And so government is under an obligation to report annually through our consolidated annual financial report, the material fiscal position of the county to the state auditor's office. Those financial statements are reviewed by an external auditor to ensure that they materially correctly state the financial position of the county and that reporting has been done in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, if you will, which are constituted under the Government Accounting Standards Board, what we call GASB, which is the accounting board that basically prescribes the standard of practice for how we report those transactions. That's what accounting work is consumed with. Now, the challenge is that it's the auditor's obligation to create the financial statements of the county. But the auditor's office relies on transactions that were entered into by departments. And so you have this nexus between the operations of departments and the obligation of the county through the auditor's office to report those things according to those accounting standards. And so departments are not necessarily concerned with reporting what happened. I mean, they might be concerned about how much budget they've used, how much budget they need next year. So there's certainly an operational component to reporting, but the reporting that really falls into the accounting realm is something that has always been really the business of the auditor's office. But there's some shared responsibility there. And so this is the challenge, is if there are operational employees that work in departments that are doing the planning and execution, that's fine. But if there are elements of that job that include the reporting, which is the accounting function, that has to be done at the direction of the auditor's office to ensure that the accounting rules are followed under GASB so that they're reflected correctly in the financial statements. So this is the question, is we need to look at these jobs that have some reporting elements and determine really who should be conducting what tasks related to reporting so that the auditor's office can give financial statements to the board to sign off on and to the external auditor and to ensure that our financial statements have been done according to accounting principles. So it's really about accountability for accounting-related functions, and because there's some shared responsibility for some of these key positions, this audit to review those positions and those tasks will help us to identify where there might be a mismatch in oversight so that we can ensure that the accounting functions are taking place. It's certainly not the intent that a department's budgeting process or transaction process is somehow managed by the auditor's office. Those are functions, administrative functions, that should reside within the departments. And our intent would be that the employees who are doing those things remain in those departments, but there may be a capacity or bandwidth kind of issue to fill this gap of the reporting element. Is that enough financial?
That's exactly right.
And I will point out that this is a compromise. If we punt this, it is a compromise, because punting this will cause more work for HR. Punting this will cause more work for the auditor's office. Punting this will cause more work for the attorneys. So I think this is truly a compromise where nobody's coming out of this with everything they want. So I do appreciate the affected departments compromising, and I do recognize that this will cause undue stress on the auditor's office, and for that I apologize. But I think this is a good way to move forward, and if we have the support of all the departments, I would feel comfortable moving forward. I do see we have Eric Edwards here, if you don't mind. Sorry, putting you on the spot at the last minute here. What I've asked all the affected departments with finance managers and financial accounting to do is just publicly state that as we go through this audit, recognizing that at the end of the audit, some of the functions that your department is performing will shift over to the auditor's office, probably some aspect of manpower as well, and just your commitment that even if you're not totally satisfied with the answer, that you will support the outcome.
Yeah, we'll support that outcome. We do hope that physically we have that presence of the experts, though, in-house.
Yeah.
That's something that we'll need for sure.
And I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I will commit to working to make sure that you have the resources necessary to do the administrative functions and have that support in-house. Just knowing that some of those functions will move to the auditor's office in the first part of next year.
Okay.
You're good with that?
That was
Okay.
never in question.
Yeah.
On the physical location.
Absolutely. Okay. I feel satisfied that we've got the support of everybody, that we can move forward. I'm good. Do you have, I just wanted to see if you had anything you wanted to add.
I'll just say that this has been, in my opinion, a long time coming. It's been talked about for years. And it's come up in various discussion topics on where it can be. I mean, actually in our staffing plan, we had a dotted line. That dotted line was talked about extensively, over the years. And so on a professional basis, I think for us, it has been looked at, talked about, maybe, different levels of how that comes about, and, nuances happen as you go through the process. And so I can support, going through the audit on it. And I would fully anticipate that there would be some changes that would happen just because of the nature of it, which 3.5 years ago, I was willing to make a move already in that direction because I could see some of the problems that were coming about and that I was hearing from the auditor's office as they were looking at some of the processes that were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to the point of auditing, that's what I'm anxious, because as Josh just brought up, if we can look at what we are currently doing, what are the processes involved, where is it appropriate and where is it not appropriate, where are there shared processes, and then that audit would at least shed the light on that and involve the department heads who are affected by it at the same time. That's why I brought this up, that I would like to strike this until we complete that audit, and bring that up and when the audit is complete from our state folks.
Well, and I don't think when you say our state folks, we haven't actually asked the state auditor's office to do it. We've actually worked with our consultants and they're going to do it. So I don't want you to think that the state auditor's office is going to come in and do that. They do mostly compliance audits. What we're actually going to be asking for is the staffing people to come in and analyze that and make sure that we have enough staffing, because I was going to say that'll be part of what we do with our consultants.
Yeah, we had been talking about, just as you did say, about for 4 months, but given the light on the SB 162, that made me want to pause on this to make sure that we are addressing those specific positions that need to be.
Right, that was the plan the whole time. So, but I just wanted to clarify that it is that the HR department has actually talked to a third-party consultant to do the audit. Right, okay, just confirming that. Do you have any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll make a motion to strike item number 38.
Well, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 38 is stricken. Number 39, approve and adopt resolution terminating the appointment of grant positions listed on attachment A, which are grant administrative positions effective March 1, 2023. Given the issues that we just talked about on 38, I see that these are actually intertwined, and I thought until the audit is actually completed, it would be best to also strike 39. And that's why I brought this up and asked to table it for now, or excuse me, hold it for now.
So I feel comfortable moving forward with this one. It gives us 2 months and we can just ask them to do that one first. The difference in my mind, the difference between 38 and 39 is that 38 would be effective in a matter of days, whereas 39 would be 2.5 months. And I think that we can just ask the consultants to start with that one. But eventually I feel that the grants office needs to move under the audit function regardless. So I would like to move forward with this. We'll just start with that department because the issue is as we move, this needs to move on. We know this needs to move under the auditor's office. If we start with that, that gives them between now and March to analyze what positions are needed and open those for hiring purposes. And I don't think the timeline changes at all with this from what we had discussed before. So I would like to move forward with item number 39, knowing that we'll just, Ralph, if you want to just confirm that we'll just ask the consultants to start with that department. And that gives us time to do that.
Well, I don't even know if we move it underneath the auditor's office, then the consultants don't even need to work in it because it's already underneath the auditor's office.
Just to figure out how many positions they need.
Yeah, on a position basis.
Yep,
Yeah,
just to figure out how many positions they need.
Yeah. And I'm fine with this as well as we. And that gives an opportunity for looking at the positions, how many are needed.
And then
we've gone through most of our, the accounting part when it comes to the ARPA and the CARES. And so we ramped up to accommodate it. Now it's on the ramp down side, or at least where it needs to be appropriately so that you can account for, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are now out there being expended. And so we've done the first process. It's the second process in looking at it and what's needed and necessary. We need to take that in consideration. And also it gives us an opportunity for that information to be, that they have to be shared in the event of how it's structured so they can share it and have it out there in a larger group than just the 3 that are there now.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll make a motion to approve item number 39.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? So 2-1. Thank you. Then, did I miss anything or was that it? Any other public comments from anyone here? Please. Oh, geez, we don't want to hear from you.
I know.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! How are you guys? I have
You weren't recognized.
a gift for each of you.
Your name and your
I am
home-
Santa.
And your home address?
And North Pole.
North Pole. okay.
North Pole is my home address. I have these little gifts for you, first of all.
Those are fantastic gifts.
These are snowmen. I picked them up at IKEA.
Is this your grandfather?
Teacher.
It's my friend. Perhaps the Public Works Department can help you assemble those later. So I want to let you know that I've been around visiting employees today at Utah County Government, and I got to say, what a wonderful group, and really, really great people here. Now, I also got something for you guys, and knowing that the commissioner's job is extremely difficult and challenging, I get all sorts of feedback from many, many elves. Let me see if I can get my bag here. And so.
You need to pull the coat rack out first?
What's that?
Need to pull the coat rack out first?
Yeah, something there. I gotta make sure I got my bag all taken care of here. Okay, I lose some things. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, I hear from many, many elves. And I gotta admit, I'm a little confused whether you're on the naughty list or on the good list. So, in being Santa Claus, I've done my best to make a decision. And my decision is I've got to please both groups. So, here's some coal. Oops, one for you. There we go.
Maybe I should get all the coal.
There's some coal. And there's some candy. So, depending on who you talk to, you're either on the naughty list or the good list. So, anyway, I just want to say thank you. Merry Christmas. It's been a great year, and we're looking for another great year at Utah County.
Thank you very much.
So, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Does Rudolph have any comments to make? Are there any other public comments? Please, sir, come up.
My name is Cole Kelly. My main purpose for being at this meeting today was because I had learned that it was Bill Lee's last meeting as commissioner, and wanted to publicly say thank you for your service to our county. But I also thought it might be an opportunity to at least ask the commission to consider the conflict of interest that took place this past election in my race for school board. Taylor Williams, the Utah County auditor, or the clerk, right, took money from a campaign for Prop 2, and I consider that to be a huge conflict of interest. That he's taking money from a campaign and then also working for the county and in terms of counting votes. In essence, he was working on behalf of a campaign and then working in the auditor's office counting ballots. And I know that, I had personal conversations with Josh Daniels. I had personal conversations with Amelia Gardner. But I think it's important for the commission to be aware of that and to address that issue. I have had a lot of people say that he didn't have any direct, involvement in the campaign of my opponent, but my opponent's campaign and the No on Prop 2 campaign were very intertwined campaigns. So to suggest that there was no involvement in my campaign, I think is a little bit naive. But I think the commission should consider the conflict of interest that took place and hopefully instill a little more confidence in our elections down the road, considering this incident. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
My name is Denise DeVank. I am an Orem citizen and a volunteer that has spent 5 years on the streets of Salt Lake dealing with a homeless crisis that is now up to 3,131 counted at the last point in time. Here in Utah County, would I have walked the streets with these people trying to figure out how to connect them to agencies, and why Provo City and Utah County does not, and still to this day, offer emergency housing shelter from this really extreme storm we haven't seen in decades. And we have had a couple of deaths, as Salt Lake has had. Mayor Mendenhall just declared a state of emergency and asked all the emergency shelters to extend the beds so that we can house all the homeless in Salt Lake. And so has Logan. Logan has also opened up beds because of this emergency. But as I've met with Mayor of Provo, police chief, and other continuum of care people in their meeting a week ago, Monday, I can see that the continuum has a good focus that we do need to provide shelter, but I can see that our elected officials, and I have had a beautiful email from Commissioner Gardner and our Representative Judkins, who would like to meet, and I hope we do get to meet soon, because right now we do have a crisis today. I met with police chief, asked him for a stay of eviction as he's removed all these encampments, which has forced very dangerous crime into encampments where we have senior and disabled people. I have personally been helping those people and brought a 73-year-old with pneumonia diagnosed at the urgent care to the men's Pam Atkinson Center that the Road Home runs. I've tried to help others that are seniors to connect them to the resources. But the problem is, as Jeremy Runya of the Utah County Housing Authority, who emailed me and said we have 10 emergency vouchers left. We have a crisis. We do not have emergency shelter. We do not have affordable housing. They are working on it, and they all agree we have to create this. We don't have a choice. The housing cost crisis and the increasing homelessness that is happening, so many people sleeping in their cars if they have one. The others are sleeping in snow and on the streets, even though that's become illegal in Provo. Yet the Food and Care Coalition cannot open their doors. They are not a shelter. They are a special process that they have that people have to qualify for transitional housing. And that is a very difficult one as I walked it with these people that I brought to it for the last 4 weeks. So as I've been walking boot on the ground, trying to figure out what can be done. I've met with DWS. I've met with so many agencies. We do have a crisis, and I do not know what the county can do, but I want to bring it to your attention because the police came down to the camp and told them that they were all issued citations for camping, which is illegal in the city of Provo, and that is city land. I found out from the development department, even though it's wild wetland. Some have camped there for 5 years. Some are so disabled that they cannot move their things. They don't have the resources, no cars, nothing to move the things that have kept them alive until now. Barely. The 73-year-old wouldn't have made it, so they called me to save his life, and he has not slept on the street since. But I really feel that we do need to have an emergency meeting, not wait till the first of the year, the next continuum meeting, the next commission meeting. We need to sit down with everyone involved and figure out how to prevent any more lives dying on our streets here in Utah County. I appreciate your time, your concern. Amelia has my contact info. Anything that you can do to help in this crisis would really be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to make a comment? Anyone online? Alice, that I don't see. Okay. Then with that, we are adjourned for closed session. Thank you, everyone.
We don't get a speech?
Well, I was just going to say,
Maybe we should, actually.
Rachel did have some cookies and stuff over here. If you wanted to get, some cookies or anything of that nature. And
Well, before we end, I want to thank you for your service. You've served in this county twice as long as I have, and I appreciate your service. I think we are absolutely going to miss the depth of knowledge that you have. You came to this county with experience that benefited the county, particularly when it comes to issues like public lands. We are absolutely going to miss your institutional knowledge. You've served the people of Utah and of Utah County longer than you've been a commissioner, and I hope that your service continues. But thank you for the knowledge that you've brought, the experience that you've brought. And I noticed some of your family is here, and I know that when a person chooses to have their career in public service or a portion of their career in public service, the family does sacrifice significantly. So I want to recognize your family's sacrifice as well while you served the public. So thank you so much for your service, and your knowledge and experience will be greatly missed.
well, thank you. Wow, even the attorneys. All right, with that, go get some cookies.
Wait, we have to adjourn first.
After our close.
We still have to adjourn.
You still have a close.
We have one closed.
Unfortunately.
Go get a
Well,
few
we
cookies.
can get cookies first
Go
before
get a few
close.
cookies. Okay.
Oh yeah, we can do.
Well, I'm not going to.
We can do cookies before close.
Oh, from here? Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll see. There's some opportunity.
Goodbye.
Yeah, you bet.